Do not buy YouTube views. In this episode, I want to give you 10 reasons why you should never do this. But before I fully get into all those reasons, I want to say kind of why it might be appealing. Because I understand, right? When you're starting off a channel or you've been putting out content for a while on YouTube and it just isn't hitting, then it might be appealing to boost those numbers, right? That sort of fake it till you make it mentality. It might work in some sense where, let's say, guests that you're trying to book, they may look at that as more legitimate, or audiences, things of that nature, and it also can make you feel good. But regardless of the superficial stuff that might be appealing, whatever the reason, don't do it. And here are very concrete 10 reasons why you shouldn't. Number one, a big one, it is in violations of YouTube's terms and services. Purchasing views is a direct violation of those services because they're fraudulent views, right? They're not really real views. And so YouTube's going to look at that and, just like any platform, they have their rules and regulations. And when they find you in violation of that, there's consequences to be paid for that, right? Now, does it always happen? Does YouTube catch all that stuff necessarily? No, not always. But that doesn't mean you aren't in violation of that terms and service that YouTube has. Number two, low quality engagement, right? This is a big one. When you're trying to grow a channel, you want people to be active with your video and your channels, right? You want them to go from video to next video, to be liking, to ideally subscribe, to comment, things of that nature. When you just buy YouTube views, that's one of those metrics, right? And also, you don't necessarily know to what level they're watching that video, right? It could just be for the minimum that's required to count for a view. Boom, you get that, and then it drops off. And so what that could be telling YouTube is, hey, this video is not engaging enough for people to watch and stick around for, so don't, it's not going to get promoted and stuff like that, as opposed to a video that has higher engagement, not only on the watch time, but also likes, comments, and shares even. All of a sudden now YouTube goes in that way of like, oh wow, people really find this valuable for whatever reason, whether it's funny or, it's very informative. So we should probably index that in our search results, right? But artificially buying YouTube views doesn't allow for that. Number three, risk of penalization, right? In addition to removing any artificial views, YouTube may penalize your channel by reducing its visibility in the search results, right? And that's a big component of YouTube. YouTube is a large search engine, right? There's Google and there's YouTube. And guess what? They're owned by the same company, right? So you don't want to discredit yourself, because a lot of times, when people search for stuff on Google, your YouTube videos have the potential to come up. And also just through the searches of obviously YouTube and stuff like that. By having low engagement and, these artificial views, well, then you're getting deprioritized in terms of the search results, and so you're not going to come up and you're not going to give yourself the chance to grow, which is not what you want, right? Number four, damage credibility. See, the thing is, we don't give enough credit to audiences. They're smarter than we'd like to think, and they can suss out when something is BS. I mean, we've had social media for a while, and for all intents and purposes, YouTube is a social media platform. And when something's not authentic, they can suss it out. Maybe not necessarily right away, but in time, it works against you. So don't do that to them. Be honest with your audience in that way, and that is much more apt to be rewarded than trying to trick them. Number five, ineffective long-term growth. This is something that I've been hinting at, but while, the views you buy might provide that short-term boost of like, oh, things are going really well, it's not going to lead to sustained growth, because part of it, if anything, you're going to have to keep buying those views, because as we mentioned, you're not getting the engagement, and it's not signaling to YouTube's algorithm that, hey, this is worthy content, keep pushing it out there because people want it. So it's, you're creating that short-term gain, maybe, but at what cost, right? And so you don't want that out there in that way. Number 6, legal consequences, right? Depending on the jurisdiction, buying YouTube views can actually lead to not only violating YouTube's terms of service, but to local and national laws related to fraud, deceptive practices, and intellectual property rights. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer, in that way, so I can't get too much into that. But that is a real possibility, especially like if you're doing it because you're boosting a video that has an ad attached to it, and you want to make the advertisers feel like they're getting their money's worth. That is a fraudulent practice, because they're not really getting the quote-unquote service that they're paying for, right? And so if you artificially buy views when you're supposed to have an advertisement and stuff like that, and you're faking those numbers, it's not good, right? Number 7, financial loss. So a lot of these companies out there that claim to get you YouTube views are scams, right? You don't know necessarily who you're giving your credit card to. And it's one thing where you don't get the service that you paid for, but now potentially some shady people have your credit card information or information about you, and God knows what they can do with it. Certainly we live in an age of identity theft and just thieving of money and stuff like that, tons of fraud charges and things like that. So don't be a victim of that. Don't buy YouTube views. Number 8, it devalues real achievements, right? This is sort of one of, like, all the other stuff is very important, but to me, if I had my way, this would be like the most important, because it basically creates inauthenticity for you and everyone else, where everything's just superficial. It's all about how things are perceived rather than how they are. And I look at it from my standpoint of, okay, how can I really know where I'm at, and how can I make improvements and know what's working and what's not, when it's all just artificial? It's made up. None of it exists, right? So as you reach the actual milestones of, let's say, getting 1,000 YouTube subscribers, or 100,000, 1 million, and a video, let's say you've been doing a bunch of videos and they've gotten 1,000 views, but all of a sudden, one manages to break through and gets, 10,000 views. Like, all these things that, certainly to the top tier of YouTubers might seem insignificant. We all started out at 0, essentially, right? They'd say the same thing with them, and they have to grow their audience and their channel. Now, they might have been able to do it quicker than you or I, let's say, but don't take away from the accomplishments of being able to achieve those certain benchmarks, because it is meaningful. And when it's just boosted through artificial means, then none of it really matters, right? It's all very superficial fluff. So don't do that. And to me, as I said, for me, this is like the most, I know as far as like actual consequences, it's the least significant, but just on a, like, let's say, spiritual level, I vibe with this one the most. Number 9, negative audience perception. Genuine viewers and potential collaborators may be discouraged by engaging with your channel. So, part of how YouTube channels grow, and just kind of, the same applies for the podcast space, and just anything in life, really, when you can combine forces with somebody else and, you boost them, they boost you, it just creates a good symbiotic relationship. Well, you're not going to attract those types of people that want to engage with you, because they'll be able to suss it out. As I said, audiences are smarter, and especially collaborators that you may want, they know all the signs of a channel that's artificially boosted. So why would they want to participate in something that, as we're talking about it, has not necessarily all these repercussions for them, but, many of them certainly in an indirect way, right? So they wouldn't want to be a part of that, and they're not going to be able to help you out. So do yourself a favor and avoid that, right? By not getting YouTube views that are bought. And lastly, number 10, unpredictable consequences, right? These algorithms and the policies of these platforms, they're constantly evolving. I mean, just look at Twitter, aka X, nowadays, right? I mean, the policies of that seem to change every single day. Not literally, but sometimes literally. So you never know how YouTube is going to crack down on that. A lot of these YouTube views that you buy are just automated bots and things like that. And, while certainly, these platforms have trouble to a certain extent figuring out, what's real, what are bots and things like that, eventually they're going to get better and better. And how that's going to negatively impact you, who knows, right? But as it stands even today, these are not good things, right? And so you want to avoid all of these things. So don't resort to these unethical practices in order to grow your channel. Do it in the proper way. Now, of course, one way to go about it is to do paid advertising, right? And that's a whole separate thing that I'm not going to get into now. But in essence, the idea is that you pay a Google, to promote that video and things like that to ideally the right audience who might find it engaging, and that will get you your visibility and so forth. So that is a way to, I won't use the word properly, but grow your channel, right? That is an option. So if you're going to spend any money, I would spend it on that instead of buying superficial views. And even that is a little bit of a long-term game. It can be a little bit more costly than certainly the $10 for 1,000 views or something like that. But it's a much smarter route. And as I said, that's a whole separate subject which I will cover in the future. So anyway, just wanted to kind of give those 10 reasons why you shouldn't do it. As always, I encourage you to comment down below, ask any questions, or comment with your thoughts, right? I'd be curious, is it easy for you to spot a channel that is, faking it till they make it, or, I'm just curious, right? Anything you want to chat about related to the subject, happy to discuss that. Or hit me up on social media at Svitek. Anyway, I've yapped your ear off long enough. Thank you for joining me. I hope this helps, and hope to see you next time.